watching Hospital Online Marketing Education. This is part 2 of my interview with Shel Holtz, in which we discuss crisis communication on social media and the concept of amplification. Let's shift a little bit now, because really when I saw you speak at the Healthcare Internet Conference in Vegas, your focus was on crisis communications.
Right. And
how that applies to in this new paradigm of social media. So let's talk a little bit about that, because you know, it's one thing to define your message as it goes out, but what happens when something catastrophic occurs, you know, at the business or at the hospital? How do you see now in this new world that communications managers need to react?
Well, first of all, it gives you the ability to react the way you were always supposed to react in a crisis, which is quickly, professionally, credibly, and transparently.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been the tendency in organizations to withhold information, to try to get away with saying nothing, usually driven by attorneys who are afraid that anything you say is going to be used by a plaintiff in a lawsuit down the road. But there's ample evidence to support the idea that you want to fess up to what's going on. You want to allay the fears and that a risk-averse public brings to the table in a crisis. So social media, I think, is the opportunity to do that, to get out there and say, yeah, we're aware of this, we're looking into it, to provide through a variety of channels where people who are concerned about what's going on are able to follow and even interact with you.
Right.
So, you know, just here, a hospital case study comes out of Scott and White in Temple, Texas, and I need to disclose that I worked with them on social media, although not on this case.
Okay.
But it's interesting, they had only had their social media program in place for a couple of weeks when the Fort Hood shootings occurred, and they were the primary intake hospital for victims of the shooting, and they were able to use a blog, they were able to use Twitter, they were able to use YouTube to get information out about everything from the ability for people to use the emergency room. In fact, they shut the emergency room down to all but Fort Hood victims, so they were telling you where to go if you had an emergency, to how long the wait was to give blood, since there was an outpouring of people who wanted to donate blood to the victims, and you know, there was a long wait, so they used Twitter to say the line is now 30 minutes or an hour, and then they shot videos, interviews with people waiting in line talking about why they were waiting to donate blood. They used both YouTube and their blog to make the press conference available that the CEO held about all of this. So they kept people informed in an ongoing basis because people were checking all the time to find out what was happening with their local hospital in the wake of this tragic event.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, being able to be there and be responsive and give that information real time, I can really see the role of this in with social media and all the tools available to that. Now, you brought up in that presentation, that keynote speech that you did, you said something that actually got the room all aghast, and that was when you said that
I know it's coming here. Yeah,
you knew it's coming here. You said the era of the destination website is over.
Yes, I did.
And remember, this was a room full of people that their primary livelihood was based on creating good destination websites.
Right.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because I agree with you. But tell me a little bit about what you mean by that.
Okay, and I'll get it on the table right up front. I don't think that means that there is no longer a need to have a destination website, but it does mean that that's not the primary place that people go anymore. And if you think about when the web was new, the cost of developing websites and the technical expertise that was required resulted in primarily large organizations being the ones who created websites. They either hired web development companies or they hired in the expertise within their own staff, and they built these destination websites, and that dominated the World Wide Web, .coms, .orgs, and .edus.
Right.
Today, with the ability for anybody to create content, the engagement with other people through social channels is more interesting to people and more credible to people than visiting websites. And if you do a Google Trends search on the websites that have traditionally been the most popular, I'm thinking Nike.com, Sony.com, things like this, you're going to see a steady decline over the past 2 years. Now, on the other hand, you go look at Facebook.com and Twitter.com and Tumblr.com and sites like this over the last 2 years, you're going to see a steady increase. The Pew Internet and American Life Project did a study and found that people who are in the net generation or Generation Y or whatever you want to call them, people born after 1980 fundamentally, most of them get most of the content that they consume from somebody that they know personally. It's a video they uploaded to YouTube, it's a status update on Twitter, it's something they've posted to Facebook. Now, what that means is that if you want to be seen, if you want your story to be told, you have to start to do that in the places where people are looking. Putting a video on your website is fine, but it's not going to be seen by nearly as many people as if you put it up on YouTube. You need to go where the eyeballs are, and the eyeballs are now out on what I've started referring to as the edge. Rather than the centralized sites, it's these sites that you don't own and you don't control, but they're places where you get to tell your story or make assets available that allow other people to tell your story for you. You still want to have the destination website because people are going to go there if they're looking for your press release or if they're trying to get the correct spelling of the CEO's name. For hospitals in particular, what are your admission procedures? Are there forms online that I can fill out in advance of coming in? I mean, it's still important to have that. But from a PR standpoint, a marketing standpoint, that's just not where people are going to go anymore.
I think in a future blog and also your future podcast, one that happened after this event, you referred to it as the concept of spreadability. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, or amplification. But you want to have your story told in as many places as possible. By putting a video on YouTube, you give people the ability to embed it on their own sites. And this happens. I mean, the Mayo Clinic puts a video up on YouTube of a doctor being interviewed about a research study that's being released, and you end up finding it on the Wall Street Journal Health blog, where more people will see it than if it was just contained over on the Mayo Clinic's website.